Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 130, Meno 92a to c. Socrates spent the last episode pointing out that the sophists actually fit the criteria that Anytus and Socrates agreed upon even better than other people, because not only do they claim to teach, but they make a lot of money from teaching, a lot more than ordinary legendary sculptors, for example. It's true that Socrates makes it appear that the sophists, especially Protagoras, claim to teach what Meno, apparently, allegedly, would want to learn, which is not the case. But even Anytus doesn't say that that is the problem. Anytus simply doesn't like sophists. What is strange is that Anytus hasn't reacted yet, which is why Socrates has been talking for so long. And even now, Anytus doesn't react. Socrates carries on. Socrates will get Anytus to respond by asking him a simple question. Poteron de un fomen kataton son logon, e dotas autus exapatan, kai lobastai tus neus, e lelethenai kai he autus, kai huto mainestai axiosomen tutus, hus enioi fasi sophotatus anthropon enai. Are we to say then, according to your argument, that they knowingly deceive and harm the young, or that they don't notice even themselves that they're doing this? And thus, are we to consider them to be mad, whom some people say are the most expert of humans? The suggestion that the sophists might be mad is what provokes Anytus to reply. Pollu ge deu si mainestai u Socrates, ala pollu malon, hoi tutois didontes augurion ton neon, tuton de malon, hoi tutois epitrepontes, hoi prosecontes, pollu de malista, panton hai poles, eosai autus esaphichnestai, kai uc excelaunusai, etetis xenos epichere toiuton typoien ete astos. They are far from being mad, Socrates, but by far more those of the young who give to these money, and even more than these, those who turn them over to them, the relatives, and most of all, by far, the cities, allowing them to come in and not driving them out, whether a xenos tries to do such a thing or a townsman. So much for Anytus's reputation for hosting xenoi. Most of the sophists were xenoi, but Anytus mentions the possibility of an astos, a townsman, being a sophist, and there were at least one or two Athenians who were sophists. It appears that Anytus's attitude would be to expel any sophist, including Athenians. We may infer, therefore, that when Anytus and Meletus accused Socrates of corrupting the youth, they had in mind, as a punishment, simply expelling him from Athens, not killing him. It's often said that Plato opposed the sophists, so we have here an interesting situation in which Socrates appears to be defending the sophists, while Anytus, the one who had Socrates eventually killed, is the one who appears to be supporting Plato's position. against the sophists. We should know by now that Socrates rarely expresses his own view. He is always talking with a view to getting a reaction from his interlocutor, and in this particular case, what Anytus thinks about sophists may well square with what Socrates himself thinks about sophists, although it's unlikely that Socrates would have gone so far as to say that they should all be expelled from Athens. Socrates would rather argue with them and attempt to persuade them to become better people. One obvious danger with Anytus's approach to the problem is that while saving Athens from actual sophists, he also persecutes people who are not sophists but appear to be, such as Socrates. We know why Socrates is so opposed to sophists. It's because they are anti-dialectic. They stop people from thinking critically and they mangle logic. But what is Anytus's problem with the sophists? And this is actually a question that Socrates himself asks. Poteron de o Anyte e dike ketis ton sophiston e ti hutos autois chalepos e. Oh, Anytus, has one of the sophists done you an injustice? Or why are you so hard on them? Ude ma dia ego ge sun gegona popote auton udeni. Udan allon easai miton emon udena. By Zeus, I have never ever been in the company of any one of them, nor would I allow any other of my acquaintances to meet them. We have to supply the last bit. Aperosar e pantapasiton andron, kai ge. So you are entirely without experience of the men, and so I wish to be. Pos an o daimonie, e dees peritutu tu pragmatos, ete ti agathon eche en hauto, ete flauron, hu pantapas si aperos eies. So how, O divine creature, would you know about this issue, whether it has something good in it or something trivial about which you have no experience at all? Socrates uses the word pantapasi, which he used at the beginning of the dialogue when he said that he had no knowledge of virtue at all. Radios, tutus kun oida hoi esin, et un aperos auton eimi, ete mei. Easily, at any rate, I know these, who they are, whether I am experienced of them or not. Mantis e isos o Anyte, epe hopos ge allos oista tuton peri, ex hon autos leges thaumadzoim an. You are perhaps a seer, Anytus, since I would wonder how else you know about these from what you yourself say. Suggesting that Anytus is a mantis, a seer, is a little misleading because it encourages the reader to think that Meno must have positive knowledge about the sophists, that they are bad. But there is an alternative, and that is that Anytus knows which teachers are good, and he knows that the sophists are not those teachers. In other words, by a process of elimination, he would know that these sophists are not good. Of course, the other explanation is that he has heard about the sophists. Anytus has been getting his information from people who don't like the sophists, and Socrates countered that a little by pointing out that there are some people who think the sophists are the most expert of all people. what seemed to be an innocent discussion about where to send Meno in order to learn the virtue which Anytus appears to have, has turned into an introduction to the problem of knowledge. Meno almost touched upon this problem at the beginning of the dialogue by asking what sort of thing virtue is. Is it something teachable or exercisable, or something which comes to people by nature, or in some other way? But he didn't actually ask, how do we know virtue? And really, he's not interested in how we know anything. He simply wanted to have Socrates' opinion about the sort of thing that virtue is. During Socrates' reaction to Meno's question, he reached the stage where he said he knew nothing at all about virtue, and he said, if we knew nothing at all about Meno, how would we know any of his characteristics, whether he is rich and handsome and well-bred, or the opposite? Now we have a similar situation where Anytus is completely inexperienced concerning sophists. He knows nothing about them, and yet he does know, he says, that they are bad. If he is relying on the opinion of others, Socrates has indicated that this is a problem because there are counter-opinions, the opinions of others, with the result that according to opinion, the sophists are either charlatans or the wisest, the most expert of all people. Are we to learn from this that the only way to know anything is to have direct experience of them? Were Anytus to meet sophists, would he acquire a more accurate opinion? Would he indeed have knowledge of the sort of teachers sophists are? I would suggest that this is not the solution, because we have many examples in the dialogues of people who meet the sophists, talk with the sophists, and they are extremely impressed by the rhetoric of sophists, although the sophists are actually harmful. These people think that the sophists are beneficial. As I say, this is just an introduction to the problem of knowledge and how we acquire knowledge. Oh wait, we may recollect that we have already had a discussion about how we acquire knowledge. But if we have the theory of recollection, why on earth are we looking for teachers?